Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We back at it again. It's Super Dave with the PA Political Revolution podcast. And again, we're going to have another good show, just like how we're seeming to having some pretty good shows lately, right? And this one is no different. And we have another special guest with us today, right? We have the legendary Mr. Harold Doucet with us. And the reason why I brought Mr. Doucet on here with us is to give us an explanation about the budget. As being a former council member, he has more insight on how the budget should operate, and he can give us laymen or average citizens a better understanding of what's going on. Mr. Doucet, can you introduce yourself, sir, and kind of give us a little bit of information on what you found out was going on in the budget?
Yeah, Harold Doucet, former council member, and as always, happy to be on a political podcast. And the
Thank you, thank
reason
you.
being, I'm the main person in favor of people participating. And the biggest problem here in our city is citizens not being informed.
Right,
So, podcast is the thing that can get the word out to citizens. And it's not only in Port Arthur, that's the thing all over the nation now,
right, right.
getting people informed. And the problem we have here is that everybody wants to complain, but nobody wants to say anything where it needs to be said or to who needs to hear it.
Yes, sir. I'll do the
But
work.
you invited me on to talk about the budget. And the reason I was anxious to do that is like you in the podcast, I believe in just informing citizens. Give citizens information so that they could come to their own conclusion. And we could complain all we want, but the most critical point in any year in the city municipal government is the budget, because that is where you're supposed to put money for what you want to do in the coming year. And in our city, we refuse or we are not doing performance oriented budget. Performance oriented budget is putting money into your budget based on what you want to accomplish in that coming year. And when you put the money in there, that is what you spend the money on. Now, the state budget law says that any money placed in any budget, it must be used for the intended purpose for what it was approved for. And, that's the problem we have. I, we have people spending money because money is there. And I think the thing that council members haven't really did uh, is understand their role when it comes to budget time. Their role
Right.
when it comes to budget time is to listen to what the city manager and the staff present to them and tell them how they want to spend money in the next year. But their role is to listen and see if spending that money is in the best interest of the citizens and the city. Is this money being allocated where we need it, where the priorities are? So that's how critical this time is. You know, uh, when we get a budget presented and you have budget workshops, I'm disappointed because what they do is they say, okay, we got a workshop. You got any questions? It's like,
Right. Yeah.
okay, can can y'all find what we got wrong in here?
Right. Right.
Can you can you identify anything? Well, council members on the other hand has to be knowledgeable enough to understand what our priorities are, what things that we really should look at, and that's what you focus in on, and that's when you start making people be accountable. And let's just talk streets. Streets has been a priority in this city for years. But as you know, in 2020, we approved a $50 million budget to fix streets. And citizens have to understand that that's the priority. This is what you do. So now you got the money, you got to do it. But you hear we got $16 million still unspent. Well, how can you not spend $10 million a year in a city with the streets in the conditions we have?
Right.
So council has to be able to, one, not accept the fact that we gave you the money is not getting done. The other thing, the council has to understand that it is their responsibility to ensure that it's done, and it's done in a timely manner. So now when we go to the budget, and the reason I start out with street, I want to let citizens understand how managing of our monies impact on our expenditures and what we can accomplish. So we do the bond for $10 million a year for 5 years, $50 million. And we got over $16 million still unspent. And the council approved last week the sale of $10 million more.
Right.
Now, that's where citizens have to be aware enough that it's time for you to let your council member know, maybe y'all need to readdress this, or they need to do like I always do. Hey, when you don't like something, just go up there and let them know your concern.
Hey,
let them know.
Hey, Mr. Doucet, so putting $10 million for streets, that's a good thing, right? I heard on the news that's supposed to be a good thing to get streets done, right?
Yeah, you see, but the news just printed what the staff told the council.
Right.
Okay. But that's when the council has to step up and say, no, we're not going to sell $10 million this year. We're not going to sell it. The reason we're not going to sell it, city manager, you've got over $16 million. You haven't been able to spend $6 million a year in 2 years. So before we get all of this money piled up, you need to show us that you could spend it. And why? Because if citizens are listening, and the newspaper didn't say this because they don't care. All they want to do is write what they hear.
Right.
But they're not thinking about this money and what it is to citizens and how you manage our debt. Well, at the end of the day, you just sold $10 million of bonds for a street that you know you're not going to spend in this year. Now, remember, a budget is for the coming year only, right?
Right.
So you're not going to spend this money, but you sell $10 million of bond, and the interest rate for that is 3.64% interest. 3.64. So you sold $10 million of bond, you're going to pay 3.64% interest. And you're going to turn around and put it in your capital improvement program for streets at probably less than 1% interest.
Okay.
So you're going to be gaining. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I think that's an important project. Let's just break that down and slow that down again. So let me get this straight, right? For the citizens out there, we already have unspent money that needs to be done to do the streets, right? So when we draw down $10 million more, right? That's going to pretty much sit in the bank because we already have money that we need to spend. Now, by that money sitting in the bank, we're going to have to pay that back now since we draw down on it at an interest rate of 3.6%, right? Somewhere around there. Over 3.5.
3.64.
3.64%. And when the bank, by sitting in the bank, we're probably getting between 0.5% to 1% of interest, right? Somewhere around there. So
That's
what you're
right.
saying, while the money is sitting in the bank, we're going to be losing money because once we draw down on it, we're going to have to pay it back now when we could have waited and spent the money we already have in the bank, right?
And then sell the bonds so that when you're ready, the money will be available for you.
Right.
And see, that's what we talk about when we start managing our money. And when you have people making decisions like that, you know, it's hurting the city because now you got a debt service you paying
Right.
for what?
Wow.
Okay. So that's how critical budgeting and managing money is. The way we manage our money that we budget for is a reflection of our city. Okay. So basically, if we say we want to clean up the city with homes, demolish homes, and we're gonna put money into it. Well, that's what performance budget is. Performance budgeting says that when you go to the council and present your budget for the coming year, you're gonna put money into this budget that's gonna be used specifically for that, and you're gonna get it done. So at the end of that year, citizens can now look back and say, boy, they tore down a lot of houses. So you see, it's budgeting and you're doing things that people can see. You're moving, but you keep putting money into a budget and you're not really spending it or you're not using it for which you asked for it, then you don't have results. Let's talk about another area.
Okay.
Citizens, they're doing the budget now. If you haven't seen any workshop attended, just go to the website,
Mm-hmm.
look up the meetings for starting in August, the beginning of August. Look at those meetings that when they first presented them, when they're dealing with the budget, and see what they're saying, see what they're talking about.
Right. Right.
Okay, understand what is going on because if you get involved to the point that you're looking at it, we have critical money in this city that is piled up,
Right. And
piled up.
right. Let me just say this right quick, and I want you to see if you agree with it. Every citizen should watch the budget, right? Even if they don't think they know a lot, because the council members don't really know much more than the average citizen. Is that like a fair statement I can say? And anybody should be able to follow the budget. You may not catch everything, but you should be able to catch something to kind of have some general understanding.
David, that is 100. Anybody that can manage their money and their finances, they can listen to that budget, listen to what is being said, how money, and they could tell whether it's right or wrong. A
Right,
lot of
right.
my knowledge, a lot of my knowledge with the municipal finances, it came because when I would hear things, I say that don't sound right. Well,
Right.
I go back and I read, and when I go back and read, right, I find out, hey, that ain't what the procedure is. Then I come back and I say, no, no, this bird don't hunt. This dog don't hunt.
Right, right.
But you see, you don't have to really be a CPA to understand whether money is being managed or mismanaged. Okay, let's go from street while we're talking about performance on it, where we put money and we see results.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you know, we you hear them keep talking about money in the budget under capital improvement, the American Rescue Act, uh, all these billions of dollars
Yeah.
that have been approved for drainage. Okay, you keep talking about the one off Jimmy Johnson, Lake Arthur, Petition. Well, FEMA won't fund it. When you want to fix things in your city, you don't. base it on whether the federal government going to fund it or not. That's the
Right.
first
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if citizens listen to the last meeting when this lady did a presentation on the city financial status, they'll find out they got an A+ bond rating because they got the money in the credit rating. See, because this city gets so much money, it's unbelievable.
Right.
You know, when you got industry giving you over $30 million and you don't have to do nothing,
Yeah.
you don't have to spend no money to make that $30 million.
So you saying
Okay,
with all this
so
money that we getting, we should be running at a better level than we running right now, right?
we should not be asking or looking for no pole hand or handouts and all this stuff
Right.
at all. Our streets should not look like this. Well, give you an example. Like I said, we went out and got this bond, and we still can't get the street fixed.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. You're gonna tell somebody that we got this money, but nobody want to work for us. Can you believe that?
Right. So the streets we've had around 60 million since 2018. Is that correct?
I would venture out to say about that much.
Yeah.
You know,
Since
and I would
2018.
venture to say, yeah, I would venture to say we probably got in the neighborhood. I would say probably about 20 right now that's unspent.
Right.
You know, and stuff. So, you know, those are type things that when you're doing a budget, right, it's a performance oriented budget. And because it's performance oriented, that's when you could come back as a council, right? When they start telling about what they want this year, I'm looking at what we did last year, right?
Right.
So you cannot ask me to give you money for something I gave you last year that you didn't use it all.
So pretty much.
Those are type things.
So pretty much you're saying since we didn't spend 10 million last year, we shouldn't have drawn down on 10 million for the coming year. Is that correct?
Exactly. Or if nothing else, go 8-9 months into the year, and if you see that you stand a chance of zeroing this out, then you go to sell the bonds. Because you'll have the money the next time you do your budget.
Right.
It'll be there. Then you can allocate it. You know, like I said, this is not rocket science. It's about spending money based on what you want to do. And we talked about the streets. We talked about drainage. Look at how much money that's in that in the capital improvement for the drainage projects. They got the one in Alberta and Port Acre, I think it has been approved. So why haven't you fixed them? Why haven't they been done? Every time you talk about and you give a briefing, you say the one in Port Acres or ever that's been approved. However, FEMA is not approving the one on. Who care about what FEMA ain't approving?
Right,
Why you haven't done these here? See, citizens have to understand your money is sitting there
Right.
to do this, which is going to make an impact on the city. So either you gonna do it, and once you do it, now you see where the money was spent. Now citizens get to understand. You know, it's like the garbage and trash. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
When I say performance oriented, I mean performance oriented budgeting. When you say we've been having a trash problem because of the trucks or the labor, well, when you're doing your budget, you say what was the problem. If the problem was trucks, that's when you say, well, we need to buy trucks this year. You
Right.
put money in the budget to do that. Or we don't have people. We got to be. Well, guess what? You need to hire somebody else.
Well, Mr.
So-
Doucet, what's wrong with staff, council, manager? Why they don't see this how you see it, in your opinion?
Because in order for council to understand the role, right,
Hmm.
council gonna have to do work. And see, that's why
Right. Do
people
work.
keep
Right.
talking about you gonna run. No, I'm not gonna run because it's not about when you call me and I go check on something for you, I go by and see what you. No, it's the time that I have to put in that when I go sit in this meeting and they
Right.
bringing something to me, I'm not going to listen to what they tell me. I'm going to know whether I'm voting in the best interest of the citizen. So I
Right.
got to do my homework before I go to the meeting.
Right. Right.
And when I ask you a question, you got to give me the right answer. Because my question is to ensure that you understand and that you're going to do right by citizens and the city. So your preparation to sit on these meetings, you just can't get an agenda.
Right.
Look over and then go and sit down. And then they read it and you vote. No. You have to make sure that whatever they're asking you, you got to make sure that one is following policies and procedures. Two, that the money is coming from the right funding site.
For each source. Right. 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 And you just made
See,
and you just made me remember something on there. I just wanted to say it right quick, and I didn't want to veer off too much off of this, but when you said that, you're absolutely right, because it reminded me of the Open Meetings Act, right? You have to research yourself on the Open Meetings Act to make sure council doing this right, because the city attorney, the mayor, whoever can get it wrong. They can intentionally get it wrong or not intentionally get it wrong. So you have to do your own research to understand, hey, city attorney, what you're saying about the Open Meetings Act, that's wrong, that's not right. Go ahead. I just wanted to throw that out there because you just made me remember about that.
well, 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 for people who listen to the podcast, I want to reiterate on what you said. You are absolutely correct. If they talk about and discuss things, they're going to bring it to you in a certain manner to make you think it's all great and it's all in line. But in fact, it may not be following procedures.
Right.
It may not be what they should be doing in municipal government.
Right.
But they're doing what they choose. And unless you are looking at these things and researching it, you're going to miss it. Because what you have is, you have citizens like myself, like you, who see something or hear, then you do the homework, then you put it out what is correct. You put it out, you put them the source on where they can find the information to
Right.
verify what you are saying, but they still want to say, oh, that's negative. No, it's not negative. It's not, it's information. If you knew, then you would agree what is being said. If you don't know, how you can disagree? That's ignorance does not help us move forward.
Right.
And 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 allowing people to continue to have a past for not managing the money. This city gets too much money for it not to be managed. That's why you can't see the impact of it. We're talking about the industry. When we say a budget, right? Another part of this budget is going to be the tax rate. They're going to have a public hearing with the tax rate, okay? But you will find that it's going to be like a penny, I think, decrease in the tax rate
Right.
this year. But what citizens don't really understand is tax rate. Tax rate is established based on what it's going to take for operation and what we're going to need from taxpayer property owners to pay us in order for us to pay the bills.
Right.
Okay. So when they doing the calculations, right, you got to figure in this $30 million you get from refineries, okay? But you got to understand the $30 million you get from refineries, you're not providing them garbage pickup. You're not providing them fire. You're not providing them police, okay? So you're not providing them these services that the property owners like myself, we pay for those services,
Right.
okay?
Yes, sir.
So we pay for those services, and we pay for it in a way of fees and taxes. So I have to pay property tax in order to help the city provide me these services, and I be able to receive these services. But with $30 million coming from refineries, but you not providing those services, the citizens of Port Arthur are supposed to realize what is the advantage of living in a city with all this crap in the air,
Hmm.
and all these people around, all this traffic and stuff, all this stuff we go through. We're supposed to realize that when it comes time for taxes, we
Right.
should have the lowest tax rate
Oh,
in
yeah.
probably the state of Texas, okay?
Right. Right.
I just say, I don't think no city in the state of Texas get an access of money where they don't have to provide services like we do, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So all this money they're giving, you could take a portion of that money when you talk about performance oriented. You put a portion of that money, you put it maybe into operations, you know. You take and put a little bit into serving the public, you know, doing something for the citizens. But then you take a little bit and you put into the tax revenue bucket, and you lower your owner's tax rate. So basically,
Right.
we should have the lowest tax rate in Texas, because the required amount of money from property taxes they shouldn't need from us, because the industry is giving so much money. You know, people may say, "Oh, he said all of that because," but what he did when if people followed me when I was on council, I talked about these things.
Right. Right. Yeah.
When it was budget time, I said about we need to start managing money and make sure that we don't put money in a budget where people don't have to manage. And we need to take a look at lowering the tax rate. These are things I said as a council member. I pushed performance oriented. I pushed start finding out what we need to operate the city. Quit wasting money, and let's run the city and let the citizen benefit from this additional money we get, and we don't provide nothing. So it's not that I'm saying this to be critical of this council, or I'm saying it because I'm not on council. I said it when I was on council. I said we need to do performance budgeting on council. I had numerous questions. I would drill. I worked hard for budget,
And
I didn't let them dictate it. Go ahead.
And also I want to kind of attest to that too, because we had some strange things going into finance back then. I remember you was on council too. I remember we had Deborah Eccles and the other finance person. I forgot. I think she's over there with the port right now. But I remember
Underhill.
Yeah, Underhill. I remember, man, they had put Miss Deborah Eccles on the spot, and I still have it on video. She could not answer some of the questions about the budget, man. She was kind of embarrassed when it was lying. I mean, it was bad. I want to reiterate, it was bad.
It was dealing with credit cards. When I addressed credit cards, because people running around here eating in restaurants, not even in Port Arthur, had an account on taxpayer money. Those are type things that is misappropriation of the taxpayers' money, okay? And not only that, but they were not going through the procedure that the city had for managing and using these credit cards. And that's when she tried to, I say, no problem. When I told her I will bring it back at the next meeting when I got my documentation that I'm talking about, well, next meeting, I didn't get a chance to talk. She said everybody finna go back through training. And they finna take a look at who really needs them. They're gonna take some of the cards back. Well, those are type things the citizens are not watching. This is the time when whoever you represent, selected to represent you, you have to see what is their participation in this process that's going to determine what we're going to do with the money in the next coming year. Okay? And how are we going to do? Are we going to address, in this budget, have we addressed the things that we need to? Some of the things that are being just not even mentioned and talked about is individuals who we have consulting or having contracts here in the city that we pay people to do the work. You may need somebody to come in and provide expertise.
Right.
But you don't hire people for long periods of time. How much money are we spending on professional services? See, these are things that council has to be prepared to ask, which if you don't ask, they're not gonna tell you that. If you go to contracting in the city ordinance and the purchasing and stuff in the city charter, it states the city manager should give a end of year report on all the professional services that was used that year, along with the preceding 5 years.
Wow.
See what that does? That lets citizens know
Transparency.
how much money. Yeah, that's it. You let know how much money you paid the people to come in and work in this city and what they did. Okay? Not only that, but if you're doing it in conjunction with the previous 5 years, it gets to show you those who have been there for over a year or something. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
You say, no, look like every year. If you give these reports and you receive that, those are type questions that count. That's why being a council member, when it's budget time, that's the most critical time. But of course, it takes a lot of your time because you have to go through this budget and you have to look at how much they're asking for this item, how much they asked for the year before, how much did they ask for the year before that. And then you ask them, what are they projecting they're going to be at the end of this year before I can determine how much I want to give you for this coming year.
Right.
You see? And that's why when you've done a piece on the contingency fund, and a lot of citizens, they couldn't understand, what it was about and stuff. But in layman terms, it's like a petty cash.
Right,
it's probably the only fund in a budget that you could actually put money where it's not identified for a specific thing. Okay. Right. However, you should be using the money for nothing that was not included in your budget. You see?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people failing to understand, and some council members, not all, fail to understand the importance of ensuring that this money that you have is being spent correctly. Because at the time you ran this clip on it, the sum was like $1 million.
Yeah,
okay.
Right,
and I'm like, I've been in council 5.5 years. We average funding that site with like $75,000, and where did 1 point? Because they actually budgeted for $75,000. Well, when you put that on the social media, I was so alarmed. I went and done some research, and what I found out with the research is that one, I asked, where is the resolution for the contingency fund? Every special purpose fund is established by a resolution that tells you how the fund is to be used and the purpose of the fund. Okay? And they say, well, we couldn't find it. That's when I went before council. I told council, you need to establish a resolution Because this money is not for nobody to spend it as they choose.
Right. Yeah.
So this is the time when you got all of this money, because you're gonna probably come up with a combined budget, probably around 200 million. Depending on what the enterprise fund is gonna budget gonna be. But I know with the operating, you're gonna be probably about 100 million, 80, 90 million
Right.
for the operating budget. So basically, you got all of this money you're talking about putting in there, but what are we gonna do with it?
Exactly.
Who is it going to? Who are you paying? What are we doing with this money? Because if people were held accountable to manage the money in this city for the size of the budget we have, we had last year, or what we normally have, if people were to start being held accountable, you will find out that it doesn't take nearly that much money to operate the city. But what you have to cut out all of the professional service. You got people coming in or people doing work that your staff should be doing.
Right.
You're paying
right.
them to do. That's the first thing. The other thing is you got to stop the waste. Okay, just because you got the money don't mean that you don't care. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to ask this question again for this year, the budget, right? From my understanding, right, a budget is supposed to be like the bare minimum that you need in running certain, running the city, right? And if you need more, a department needs to come to the council and ask for an increase in a certain budget so it can bring transparency to the citizens and also to the council so they can ask questions why you need the budget. So there's something they can kind of look in and see if it's, really a need and necessity for it. Is that correct? Is that correct in a brief assessment of a budget?
Well, I'll tell you what. It's half and half, and I'm going to explain it. Then you'll see what part was good, what part was not bad, but it wasn't pertaining to it.
Yes, sir.
First of all, in the budget, right? They require that when you approve the budget, they say the money can only be spent for the purpose for which is intended.
Right.
The other part of that, they say, is the state law says you cannot amend. You cannot amend your budget. You cannot go get money out your reserve to put it back into your operating budget unless it is a case of an emergency dealing with public health and safety.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
You see, now that's something that I caught on to when I was on council that I seen we were doing. We were taking money out of the reserve. We were putting money in there. Anytime somebody came with something we need to do,
right,
and we didn't have the money, we just amended the budget. But when I got to understanding the laws and everything, I say, hold up, we can't do this. And if you follow the time when I was on council, we didn't amend that budget.
Okay.
Unless it was for a case of emergency dealing with public health and safety. You see, but what you find is not only should you not amend it. See, the state law says you don't amend it for that purpose. So the state puts you in a position where they won't let you pass a budget, then go back and get money, right? To do other things that you didn't put in the budget. That's how the state control you. But if the state don't know, then you do a lot of stuff, But when the state come in and find out, then you're going to be found violating the law, okay? And that's where council members have to understand what is the law to ensure that we follow it and understand once you approve the budget, don't forget the budget. And when I go back to what I said earlier about preparing for council meetings, right?
Right.
Anytime they're requesting you to approve them spending money, they tell you the funds are available in this account, and they give you an account number. That's a long number they be reading, right?
Right, yeah.
Well, what I did, I went back and found out what line item that was to ensure that the money was coming from the right funding. And sometime I had to have things corrected
Right.
because they was telling me where the money was coming and it wasn't. That was another practice that was pretty rampant. Was a lot of time they would tell us that they want to approve funding for something and they'll say it's coming from this account and that account. Okay.
Right.
Well, I told them, if you're going to tell me it's coming from two different accounts, I want to know how much specifically is
From each
coming from
account.
each one of these accounts. Don't just tell me $50,000 and it's coming from A account and B account. You tell me you're taking 25 from A and 25 from B.
So a quick question. Why are they allowed to do this? Who stops them from doing this? Why do they continue to do this if it's illegal? Mr. Doucet, like I know citizens will be asking that question.
Well, like I told you, unless the council members check these funding sites, right, and ensure that it's coming from the right thing, and ensuring that we're being spending money right, then it's nothing, you know. And see, that's what I tell people. The easiest part of being a council member is going out, listen to people concerns or complaints,
Right.
and going back and address. That's the easiest part of being a council member.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest part is preparing to go to a meeting and ensure that what they're presenting is that. See, and I used to tell people that staff people think like staff people.
Right.
They see a whole pot of money. Oh, I'll just take it from here. I ain't gonna use that.
Right.
So that's what they'll do. But see, the council person has to be a person that looks at that and ensure that that's correct. Because you're looking at it to protect
the money,
the spending of that money just as you approved it. Just as you approved it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't let staff dictate. They make the request, but when you say yes, you got to know that what they requested is following policy procedure and it is the right funding.
And it's needed, yeah.
So
necessary.
what you have to do, you have to look at that loan number. You have to go to your budget,
mm-hmm.
find that number, and look at that line and find out, oh, yep, that's where the money's supposed to come from. Because like I said, sometimes they're taking from a place where they shouldn't. See, because what the procedure says here in the city is that if a individual wants to move money from one line item to another line item within a department, right? It says the city manager can approve it, okay? But if a person if the city manager wants to move money from one department to another department, it takes council approval. You see?
Yes,
but
sir.
If they present you with a request and they say the money is available in this account and they give you the number, when you check that account, that may be coming from another department. That is where the council member then say, wait a minute, why are we moving money from this account to this, from this department to that department?
Right, okay, I got you.
You see? Because if you don't catch it now, listen to me.
You approve.
If you do not catch it and you approve it, then you just approve them moving it from one department to the other.
Right.
Although they didn't ask you. They didn't let you know.
Right.
See, so when people talk about being a council, that's why when you selecting people to represent you, you better select somebody that one can read and comprehend. Two, people who willing to ensure that what they finna vote on, right, they really understand what it's about. And that's why when you hear council members talking and questioning, that's the council member that's been reading or into it. When you got nothing to say, that means you just following along. So whoever elected you, they don't really have a voice on council because you don't say nothing.
Right.
You don't question nothing. You just approve it.
And people need to understand these transgressions, right? sometimes people may not think this is serious or really understand it, because just like you said, you have to come to council before you move money from one department to the other. Like you just said, sometimes they'll put on there on the funding source instead of instead of like a money source, they actually put a different department in which they know that it shouldn't be that, and you'll
Oh,
approve.
no, they
Mhm.
should tell council. They
Yeah,
should tell council
tell council, ask
this,
them, right,
this the money we asking that you approve this. The money is actually coming from this department to that department.
right, right,
So now council could say, well, why are you moving it?
absolutely, yeah. So
Because if you could take it out of there next year, I don't need to give you money over there because you didn't need it.
right, and
See, that's the time I used to tell. You probably heard me tell when Mr. McDougal was
oh
manager.
yeah,
He got
yeah,
pissed because that's what I said. You all up here in these departments.
right,
You putting so much in the department, they don't have to manage. Oh no, we not. Well, the fact of the matter is, I see this because I'm looking at how things are progressing and how money is being spent. So, and how money is being moved around. You know, you asked us to approve it for this, but then once we approve the budget, now you just start spending money. And that's why I said those things, and that's why I would make sure I read, because at the end of the day, you know, you have to be able to know what you are approving and what they are doing, especially when it comes to finances. The city receives so much money. The money has to be managed, though. You know, you can't just
right.
spend money. You can't spend money on something that you didn't budget it for, you know, and stuff. And that's just like the contingency fund that you looked up. When I looked at the contingency fund, some of the expenditures that they were spending, we actually had money allocated in departments where they could have put that money in where it belonged, not in the contingency fund, because you taking money out of the contingency fund to spend for something that you should have been paying for out of this department. You see, so that's why I said you padding it and you put money in it. You put all this money in there. Then once we approve the budget, then you start spending the budget. That's why it's so important for council members to make sure that they look at these different allocations, these different funding sites, and if that money is supposed to come from there or not. And it's two things that the citizens could really look at is the background too. Whenever they make a request, they always give you a background to it, you know. And I refer to certain things, you know.
Right.
They talked about uh, spending $500,000 this year's budget for studies to extend Jimmy Johnson from the medical center to 365. Well, one they say is in the capital improvement plan. Comprehensive city comprehensive plan. I don't care what it's in. If you did not put $500,000 in the budget when you approve it with Jimmy Johnson extension as a project, you don't have money for it.
Yes, and also on that extension, go ahead and explain that to citizens while it's wrong, right? While it's wrong, while we're doing it for a developer, and we shouldn't be
And let me tell you,
building roads for developers. Go ahead, sir.
that all that property back there is owned by somebody. Okay, this guy come up with this talking about 20-year plan. First of all, you don't want to get off a 20-year plans because most people that's got something to do with it gonna be dead by the time it's supposed to give you what they say. So
Right, absolutely.
somewhere down the line, you probably won't get what you said. But the fact of the matter is, what we do with developers is we have incentives where we go with the 380, or we go with paying 30% of your infrastructure, whatever. Okay, but we don't build the street.
Right.
It's your project. You put the street in, and we give you 30% of the cost.
And when you say give thirty
Okay.
percent, is that what, cash, or is that tax incentives?
No, that's cash.
Okay.
That's cash.
Okay.
That's cash. You reimburse the cash.
Okay.
Okay. So you know when we start doing things like that, then we have policies and procedures. So Why are you even doing a study on a road that is not your responsibility? It's the developer's responsibility.
Right, right.
You see, and see, these come from people who are talking to people and going back and presenting this thing like, oh, we're gonna get all this revenue. No, because all this is talking about happening over a period of time. Second thing is we don't build roads. So why are we even getting into this?
Right, right.
Put in the road.
So
Okay.
I just want the citizens to understand when we put in the road, that means there's less money the developers spend, right?
Well, what it is, yes, we actually reimburse them 30% of the cost for surge and roads and stuff, and that's how we help them to do a development that's going to bring us revenue. It'll pay for what we're giving them in the long run. We'll get our money back, plus we'll start making some eventually, okay?
Right.
But it's done in that conjunction. We don't go in and do a road. Now, the reason we don't go in and do a road, okay, this is why. Say this developer got all this undeveloped property, and that property that we talk about over there is zone agriculture, okay? It's zone agriculture. So if a developer decides to go and buy all that property back there and decide to develop it, you know, he's got to invest in that, okay?
Right, right.
But now, whatever the property costs him, he won't be he gonna start recouping it, because when he put a road in now, the property now become of a higher value. You see what I'm saying?
Right, right. It's not agriculture no more. It's got a road in it.
There you go. So now it's zone commercial. So when he starts selling land, he's making a fortune just on selling of the land.
Right. Okay.
You see? So if he wants to develop it, he go in and do the road.
Right. So
now we give him 30% of it. Now, therefore, now we have established an incentive for him to put a road. Now, with a road, people may go in and buy a property.
Oh, okay, I got you now. So let me go ahead and recap right a little bit. So pretty much when it's agriculture, that's cheap land. You buy cheap land. So go ahead.
Hey, people who got a lot of property, what they do, they go put a few cows on it.
Yeah, for pay taxes,
and they
right.
put it agriculture because it's low taxes. Okay.
Right.
It's undeveloped, just out there.
So that's pretty much a little bit of real estate game for people that didn't know. So they buy it.
There you go.
So they buy it as an agriculture, right? Throw some cows, buy it real cheap rates. So they're going to make some money once once you put a road in and it changes to commercial. Right, and especially over there in Jimmy Johnson, it's probably going to get inflated really nice. So they need
that's the whole thing.
Right, that's the whole
You see,
the whole purpose of development.
Right, a council got to understand that you don't put the money out there because you don't have money. That's taxpayers' money.
Yeah, right.
You don't put the taxpayer money at risk. You make them put money out first.
Right, then reimburse the cash. Yeah.
Because in order for him to get the 30%, everything has to be inspected to meet the city code and the ordinances and stuff.
Right.
You see? So once all that is done, now he's going to sell the property for a lot. He's going to make a mint, but they may start developing it. Now, once they start developing, the city's going to start getting higher taxes. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's how the city going to start getting this 30% back. Okay?
Right.
And then eventually, it'll start making money.
Gotcha.
You don't take taxpayers' money and go and do this.
Do the development, do the work.
You don't do the study.
Right.
You don't do the design. You don't do that with taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
You see? So when you got council members pushing these things and don't understand how municipal government works, that is when you start dealing with misappropriation of the taxpayers' money. Because you wouldn't put your money out because we don't give the 30% until the road is completed and we've inspected it.
Right, yeah.
So we can't lose.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Because all of the burden we need to understand all of the burden should be on the developer. And the developer, they get, the reimbursement, like you said, 30% of the street infrastructure. But the developer has to put in the work. You don't tie city resources up with something a developer wants to do, right?
Yeah, that's how come people hear somebody wants to. How many times people are talking about doing something on Pleasure Island? Oh yeah, they come before they want to do something. But the thing about it is, they want the city to foot
To fund it.
a whole bunch of money.
Right,
But guess
right,
what?
right.
The city can't because we are not allowed to use the taxpayers' money
In
for
that
that purpose.
in that
See,
fashion,
y'all
right.
pay us taxes to provide services and operate this city. You don't pay the city taxes to develop something or build something, okay? That's not what cities do, you see.
If the city
Cities
can't do it,
partnership to get something.
if the city can't do it, they'll run to the EDC, right, and try to take that money, right?
Yeah, well, and then see, here's the deal. The EDC can can do it, but the EDC, they only do from outside to the land. They don't go inside with it, okay?
Right, right,
But
right.
if people really want to bring something to our city, we have incentives that we could give them. But it's by policy. You see, you got council members and people who own in city that don't understand. Yeah, you could do a lot of stuff, but it ain't following the law.
Right, they ain't following the law. And then if we
And you giving away taxpayers' money.
right, and we taking on the risk, hell, if the project fails, the city lost money, the developer may lost a minimal amount. So, that's a bad deal for
Well,
us.
well, you see that then we go back to what our topic was today, and that was the budget, because all these things we're talking about must be in our budget.
Right.
Okay, you see, we we got money in there for things. So you plan these projects, you give them a project number, and you put money in the budget to do those things. Okay, but what you don't do, you don't start doing things during the year that you did not put money in the budget for.
Right.
And that's the problem. And that's when you find out you're not being accountable. We talk about a budget, we talking about putting money in, and you're going to say exactly what you're going to spend it on. These are things we want to do this year. This is the money we're putting there to cover these things. That's the way a budget works. That's why a budget must be balanced. You must not have more expenditures than you have projected revenue for that coming year. It must be budget. You cannot have more. If you have more expenditures than you have projected revenue for the coming year, you have to cut the expenditures, okay? Or if it's that important, you have to go into your reserve and balance your budget with the reserve. But
Right.
you have to have a balanced budget when you approve your budget. Your your expenditures cannot exceed your projected revenues. You see? So when you're talking about these things, you have to be able to understand, how are we spending our money? What is our money doing? Money sitting in the bank for things that you've already said we're going to do is no good. It's no good. I mean, how can we get things done? Streets. No, why are we still talking about streets when we put all this money in, but now we ain't spending it? And the city manager said at the last meeting that they sent out bids for streets and they only had one person that replied.
Hmm.
You know, it just, I don't fan in it.
Right. Yeah.
I just don't. I mean, it's something we got to do this. We got to be aggressive, because when you got money, they got people want to work. Okay,
Oh yeah.
and my thing has been, I've never been in favor of having one contractor doing streets in the city. With all
Oh
the money we
no.
had, I've been
Yeah.
saying it from day one. A person that takes these, they got to come in and get them done. And don't give it all at once. Bring in 3, 4 people. Let them all work. If a person don't do a job, you cut them out. Let them go.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
guess what? Put enough people working in this city on streets that you can see streets happening, because the answer is not us doing the streets. That is not the answer. You don't want
Yeah.
to do that, because when the city does the street, you don't get a warranty.
Warranty on it, right?
I mean, they go out there and put an overlay on the street. You come back, oh, it looks great. Then 2 months it start failing, and you say, oh, this street breaking up already. Well, guess what? We can't call out nobody to come back and repair it. We ain't got no warranty.
Mm-hmm.
And now that, but the streets that we do overlay, they have got to be the streets that need or have been tested for overlay, as opposed to one that been tested and saying basically we need to do reconstruction of it. Because a lot of the streets I've seen that we've done lately have been mostly overlays.
Right.
But we putting out money for street, because if you recall, we paid a large sum of money for a company to come in here with a truck that was surveying these streets, and their results basically told us which one needs to be reconstructed and which one you just could do with an overlay. So, it's a lot of things, but this time of year is very critical, because one, you're going to hear where they're putting the money and what they're funding. And then during the year, you should see if these things are happening. And if they're not, then you got to start looking at, are we actually budgeting to get things done, what we want to be accomplished? Are we just budgeting, put money in there and just spending money? Last year, capital improvement program. Okay, you had all these things. How much did we really accomplish? Councilman McKinley has been asking for 2 years now. How much money I have left in District 3? How many streets that I selected in District 3 to be fixed and council approved? How many streets have been done? How many streets is left to do? He been asking that for 2 years. He still ain't got the answer.
Well, and council, they need to hold somebody's feet to the fire. I mean, I don't see how they can do it. I don't see how they can let staff, city manager continually not answer them on money issues. I mean, I don't see how they do it.
Well, the thing about it though is that's why citizens who hear these podcasts or hear someone go before council and say, don't take for granted what this person's saying is right.
Yeah.
But go do the homework and the research yourself. And when you do that, you're going to find out, yeah, they were right. So now you coming to your own conclusion. You're not listening to what somebody's telling you. See? Because you could be told information to inform you of something, or you could be given information to misinform you.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't determine whether it's misinforming and informing. So what you have to do, if you really care, you need to listen. Where this person getting this information? What this person, go and look it up. Because all of these ordinances and stuff, they are not written for a college grad, okay? You read it, you can understand it. Because the mayor just had them to vote and approve anyone coming before council do presentations must be invited by either the mayor, the manager, or one council member. So now, citizens who want to go and do a presentation have to be invited by a council member, the mayor, or the manager. I served on council 5 years. I sat there many times and heard citizens and people come and do presentations from council. You always go through the city secretary. So why the mayor brings something to take that right away from people and council approve it? But that's what just happened to citizens. And if citizens don't get involved and don't understand it, when they did that, citizens who heard it should have called their councilman and said, why are you changing this? Tell me just why. Because none of them really know it was coming. And citizens just didn't understand. If somebody wanted to go and do a presentation, if the mayor don't want to invite them, if the manager don't, and if one council member don't, they ain't going before council. That council cannot be controlled. Citizens cannot be denied to come before them unless somebody invites them.
Right.
That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard.
Yes, it is.
And it's been there for long. So you see, citizens have to really listen. And, you know, I always preach it now. Don't listen to what I say. Go and take a look at the information that I'm referring to support what I'm saying. And you will then find out. And if you got the average intelligence, you're going to see. You don't have to be a council member to understand whether money is being spent right or spent wrong. You just have to understand how it's supposed. And you can learn all these things by reading these ordinances, you know, and understanding what is required. You know, because some of the people telling you something, they're not even looking at what is required. Because I've seen times when they're doing things, and when you question it, say, well, where is it written? Oh, well, it's not written. Well, if it ain't written, you don't do it.
Right.
You don't run this city. The city should run the same way, no matter who is the manager, no matter who is on council, or who's the attorney, or who's the secretary. This city should run the same way because it's written how the city should run. The budget is outlined by the state and the city so that all monies be accountable. How do you find money in finance?
Right.
Like you found in the audit. We found money. No, nobody is losing money down there. Finance don't even have money. You pay the cashier. So how do you find money?
Right.
You know, when someone say we found money, it should be a question. No, who failed to account for this money and where the ball was dropped? Nobody find money. Well, it's budget time. The best way to do it is listen. Listen to some of the things that they're talking about putting money into, what they're planning on doing for this coming year. And then watch. If these things are not done, where the money? Why are they not done? We can't keep saying we put money in here to do this year, but we don't do it this year. Why are we not doing it? We put money in there to do it.
Yeah.
That's what citizens got to start holding council people responsible. Asking your council person.
It's like they resetting it, keep resetting the time frame on the streets.
Well, they reset anything that they don't do.
Yeah,
but the question is, we need to, as citizens need to know why you didn't do it, because you actually approved money to do it. You said that's what you were going to do this year. You put the money in there to do it. So why you haven't done it? And I'm going to tell you, there may be a good reason. But if you look at what doesn't get done, you'll find out that some things not getting done, there's not an acceptable explanation on why it wasn't done, other than incompetency, okay?
Right, yeah.
You know, so, you know, right now, is the budget. You know, they're going to have the public hearing for the tax rate. You know, citizens don't have to attend the meetings. What they should do is go to the website and look at the videos of the meeting. Because, you know, in another, we're in August, in another 9 months, you know, you're going to be electing council people again. You know, it's like you don't follow, but everything wrong, you blame everybody. You know, no, listen to what people say Find out who's standing up for you, who's trying to do the right thing, and those who are full of it. Okay? You know, I mean, you got people playing a game on you,
Yeah.
telling you things don't even meet the common sense test. Okay? You know, I mean, that is what citizens need to realize. So citizens need to get involved, take a look at some of these videos of the meetings dealing with this budget so they can understand what are they planning on doing with the money in the coming year, David. That's
Right.
very important because once they approve it, that's the money they got for the next year. So if you want to know what we put money in for, you got to get interested. You got to get involved. You know, you just can't sit back and complain.
Yes, sir.
That's not going to get anything done. So, I sure appreciate it, and I hope that some of the people will get involved and understand uh, this budget process and read it and read what it says and stuff. You even can Google it, the state laws and stuff. But understand it's your money. It's,
Yeah. Your
it's,
money.
it's your tax dollar.
Your
You
money,
know,
your
I
streets,
mean,
your
it's your
city.
tax dollar.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, quit complaining. Get involved. You know, don't don't take everything that you hear as being truth.
Right.
Get involved. Check it out. And I tell them, don't believe nothing I say. I'm just like everybody else. I got my own thing. But when I tell you, and I tell you where you can find information, go look the information up.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone starts talking about it to you, you can tell, no, that's not the way it is. No, that's not a fact. Or, hey, councilman, why are we doing this? This doesn't follow what the procedures are. I read this, and start holding people accountable, and then maybe we could turn this ship around and start getting this city going in the right direction.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It seems that sounds good, brother. I think we can kind of end on there. If you want to give us some last words, and round everything up for us.
Well, I tell you, like I said, if you go to uh, any city, you go to anywhere, anybody talk about municipal government, that's city government.
Mm-hmm.
If they talk about county government, if they talk about state government, or they talk about the federal government, the most critical time is budget. Budget. That is where they're going to decide what they want to do in the next year with the money that you give them. And that's it, D.
Right. Okay. And everybody, I want to say I do appreciate y'all for checking out the PA Political Revolution podcast and take it easy. Peace.
All right. Later.